Hi, I'm Dr. Joe from the Southside Health and Wellness Campus. I'm very excited today because we're going to go over the dramatic differences that exist in people's attempt to lose weight and to get healthy by utilizing intermittent fasting versus the traditional calorie restrictive diets that most people use. Now, over the years, many people have attempted to use diet programs and maybe have success short term, but ultimately don't find that it's effective long term for them. And what I want to do is discuss about what happens inside the body during that type of a dieting program versus the very popular intermittent fasting that's been utilized in the more ketogenic style of diets, which are higher fat and lower carbohydrates. So first, let's talk a little bit about traditional calorie restriction. So what happens is as the body's need for energy goes down because a person has reduced the amount of food that they're consuming, the brain realizes it's not going to have enough fuel to run all of the body systems, the thousands of body systems that it has to control. So what it does is it sends signals through the hormones in the body to the thyroid and through the pituitary gland and other organs to basically say, slow down. It's similar to when your cell phone goes into energy saving mode as you're getting too low of a charge for the phone. Ultimately, what happens if you hit that button to say energy saving mode, it will reduce the amount of features that the phone has available. In many cases, it will dim the background light in it. The applications may run slower, and ultimately the functionality of the phone reduces. Now, in many cases, it may not be something that a person will notice if they're just doing some basic texting or talking, but if they're getting into more advanced things on the phone in some way, they may see there's some lag time because the phone will throttle down some of those features. Now, it's okay in a phone, but not so okay in the human body, which has so many important systems that need to run 24/7. And when that occurs, ultimately by doing a calorie restrictive diet, your basal metabolic rate will reduce, which is ultimately an estimation of your body's daily needs for calories. It will start to reduce. In many cases, that will reduce by upwards of 40 to 60% because the brain and the body has such adaptive abilities to do so. Now, we also know the basal metabolic rate as metabolism. So when a person hears about a slow metabolism, they realize that that's not a really good thing, and especially for weight loss. So when people attempt to cut calories, that is one of the first steps that starts to happen is a reduction in the metabolic activity. Now, let's talk about the differences in intermittent fasting and how that would work towards its ability to affect the basal metabolic rate. So when a person is fasting, ultimately, they're not usually going to be reducing calories, or if they are, not very significantly. But what they're doing is they're extending the amount of time that they're fasting throughout the day. So the best example of this is if you finish dinner at about 7 p.m., okay, and instead you decide to have no snacks that night, you go to sleep later on, and basically you wake up in the morning, maybe around 7 a.m., around 12 hours later, but instead of having food right away, okay, and breaking the fast with a traditional breakfast that most people are used to, you decide to extend that just a little bit longer to go to 14, maybe 16 hours. So instead of eating at 7 a.m., you would eat at 11 a.m. It's a 16-hour fast that person would be in. So they're extending the amount of time that the body is without food coming in from external sources. But as we'll talk about in a moment, it has other forms of energy in the form of body fat that it can dip into to utilize to run all of the organ systems. When this occurs, it does not slow down the metabolism because the body realizes it's got available fuel, and it especially works incredibly well when you're utilizing a ketogenic style diet or a higher fat diet because fats metabolize slower and they're a slower, more consistent source of fuel giving the body the energy that it needs. So in this case, basal metabolic rate stays high. That's just like a young child that has an incredibly fast metabolism, or maybe a 16-year-old boy that can eat an entire pizza and it seems like they burn it off in like 10 minutes versus someone who's struggling with their basal metabolic rate being lower where they're eating a salad and they still feel like they're gaining weight. And it's because the metabolism is everything when it comes to weight loss. If you reduce energy usage by 40 to 60%, it's very difficult to combat, and just a little bit of extra eating in this situation would cause a person to gain weight again after they've ended a diet program. So now let's talk about some of the other important things that change in the body, okay, and dramatically how different they are. Now there's a lot of information on this board, and I want you to be able to hear all of it and see all of it, and I'm going to have a PDF available for you or a link so that you can look at this later, but if you want to get a screenshot, go ahead and do that at this time. And ultimately, let's explain all these differences that occur between the two. So when a person's in intermittent fasting, what happens is they actually have decreased insulin response because they're not eating as frequently. Every time you eat, you will have some insulin response, okay? And in doing so, that helps to reduce insulin resistance, which is often a precursor to diabetes or pre-diabetes, which at this time, over 100 million Americans in America alone suffer from that condition. And many scientists and medical doctors would actually state that by doing intermittent fasting, it can actually have dramatic impacts on reducing diabetic needs for medications, and often pre-diabetics to reverse that situation where they may never become a diabetic at all, and they control it completely by food. Okay, so insulin is huge in helping to reduce weight. Why is that? Because when you increase insulin response, it ultimately causes blood sugar to be stored eventually as fat in the body, and if it's not dipped into eventually as an energy source, a person will continue to gain weight, year in and year out. Now, it's very different versus the starvation type of diets that people are used to, where they cut calories by 300 to 500 or more calories a day. Insulin response is often quite high because they're often eating small meals very frequently throughout the day, many times very carbohydrate-based meals, because their cravings are often quite incredible. So if the insulin response is going up frequently, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day because they're snacking, because many people have been told that snacking is a good way to keep blood sugar stable, well, ultimately by doing that, that will contribute to insulin resistance, which ultimately helps to create the situation where a person may become eventually pre-diabetic or diabetic. Let's look at number 3. Now, as you're doing intermittent fasting, it's actually going to help burn fat because you're going longer periods of time from when you eat at night until morning. And because you're not spiking the insulin by eating very frequently during a fasting window, which one of the most common fasting windows that people will use is like a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour window like I spoke of, you're not getting large amounts of that insulin spike, and therefore you have a 16-hour period of time to digest your last meal at night and then dip into quickly burning of fat. So it extends that amount of time that your body uses it as a fuel source. So therefore, your energy sources are much more stable. Compare that to the calorie restriction diet, where you're burning sugar because you're constantly fueling the body, spiking the insulin, and that creates an unstable energy situation. So as we speak of energy, number 4 talks about energy. When you do intermittent fasting, people rave about the amount of time that they have to do other things because their energy soars. Why is that? Because when your body is not spending tons of time digesting during that fasting window, it has much more energy to distribute to all the other body systems, which is also why so many other positive health benefits occur by doing so. It also helps to improve thyroid function because when the body has a constant source of fuel from the food that you eat, and then during the fasting window, from the consumption of body fat to keep a fuel source readily available with lots of nutrients as well, the thyroid hormone gets this constant signal of keeping that metabolism healthy, so thyroid function often improves. Versus on the calorie restrictive side, energy reduces because the body goes into starvation mode. It doesn't have a lot of extra energy to give you to go out and have fun with your friends and play sports and do things with the kids. So many people feel very lethargic and fatigued when they do a diet, or maybe because they've done a diet, they continue to have that same effect long term because they've actually inhibited thyroid function, and over time that could be a very serious situation, often requiring medical attention. Now, number 5. Growth hormone. Now, this is a fantastic benefit of doing intermittent fasting. Growth hormone is basically the fountain of youth hormone. It keeps you feeling young. It keeps you looking young. And it actually also helps to improve lean muscle mass, which is one of the benefits. And that's why young kids often have very lean body mass indexes. Versus when you are doing calorie restriction, cortisol will actually start to spike because the body feels stressed. It does not see fuel coming in consistently. That's a stress response by the body. It spikes the amount of cortisol that's produced in the body, which if you want to take a moment and Google cortisol, you'll look at all the negative health detriments that come from high amounts of that being in the body, and it basically makes you look and feel old, and it actually decreases muscle mass. In many cases, when a person realizes that they're having more trouble walking long distances or upstairs, their legs feel heavy or their arms don't feel as strong, it's often because they're producing large amounts of cortisol. Now, if you want more information about hormones like growth hormone and cortisol, please look at our channel and basically look up the video that talks about balancing hormones naturally. I'll put a link below so you can find that easily, but it's a tremendous talk about how to balance those hormones and look more towards the productive hormones like growth hormone versus the destructive ones like cortisol long term. So number 6, when doing intermittent fasting, there are both short and long-term weight loss benefits from that. Why is it? Well, short term, basically the body is in a fast metabolism state. It doesn't crash the metabolism, so long term by doing it, the body continues to be efficient at burning off fuel, dips into the fat reserves, helps to keep weight loss to a point, where when a person gets at that point where they've lost all the weight that they want, the body can often keep that weight much easier than if it goes into the calorie restrictive situation. When you do the calorie restrictive situation, the body will lose weight sometimes short term because there is that initial loss and reduction of calories. But when the body catches on to the fact that there's not going to be a lot of them available for very long, it ultimately will start to gain weight and it will store fat in the body as a source of fuel in the future. But unfortunately, even though fat is a wonderful source of fuel, such as in what I talked about over on this side, it always has this constant stream of insulin and glucose in the body, so it will never dip into the body fat. So ultimately, the body will continue to gain more and more weight and never dip into that potential energy that the body fat has available to it. So that is one of the worst things that a person experiences from dieting, that starvation feeling. Okay, number 7. Improved digestion. Well, why would there be improved digestion? Well, ultimately, because the body can spend a lot less time doing it. When it's only digesting during an 8-hour period of time versus a 12 or 14-hour period of time and digesting 6 small meals and snacks all the time, it can focus on 1 or 2 or 3 meals a day during that 8-hour or whatever window of fasting that a person's doing, and therefore it can do it efficiently and then put more energy towards other things thereafter, and digestion improves tremendously because it's doing it less frequently. Versus the opposite there, worsened digestion, people that continue to graze all day long, their digestion never turns off, so they often start to have discomfort in their abdomen, they have reflux conditions, they have irritable bowel types of symptoms. All sorts of things can occur when you're continually putting food into your digestive system and not giving it a chance to rest. Number 8, satiety. The cool thing about doing intermittent fasting is that by doing it, the body is using fat as a fuel source, which is a slower burner, and by doing that, it will feel full longer because the brain says, hey, there's plenty of fuel available. One of my favorite sayings as to where it gets this fuel from is from Marxist, and he's an author and a big-time keto enthusiast. He basically says the body will dip into the bun and thigh cafe. So it will find fat in the buns and thigh, which may have a lot of it in some people's cases, to have plenty of food available, keeping the brain feeling full and not asking for more fuel, especially when you have a nutrient-rich diet, which is very important. This does not mean that you can just starve your body and give it junk food. This is ideally in a situation where you're getting lots of nutrient-rich foods and plenty of healthy fats and proteins and low glycemic carbs. Versus over here, as it says, where your nutrition is very low, a person can feel like they're starving just because the nutritional density of the food is not helping to satisfy the body's needs. So it feels full longer, and ultimately what's cool about this is when the body feels full longer and eats less, you will often spend less money on food because you're not preparing 3, 4, 5, or 6 meals a day, which ultimately you'll see a savings in your budget by doing that. Versus being hungry all the time, you constantly need blood sugar, you feel starving, and the cost of food obviously goes up, and especially when people are buying all sorts of packaged processed foods. Number 9, autophagy. You may want to Google this term and look it up. It's a wonderful process that occurs in the body, and it's basically like controlled recycling. So if the body has periods of time where it's not eating, the body will actually go in during those periods of longer term fastings, usually around 12, 14, and 16-hour period of time, and it will start to scavenge foreign proteins and things that it doesn't need in the body that are basically unwanted. Cells that have basically been worn out and used up, it will go in and it will scavenge those up and it will recycle those things to get the proteins and fats and other nutrients out of them to send and reproduce and make new healthy cells. So it's a phenomenal process, and there's tremendous amounts of research that shows that by encouraging autophagy, even 16 hours, 20 hours, 24 or more hours of fasting, longer term fasts, have been tremendous at helping to improve and reverse a lot of ill health conditions that many people have. And some doctors are making claims that by doing that, it can actually help in cancer situations, because cancer cells are unwanted and the body can often go and try to attack those. So look that one up. Versus decreased autophagy over here, because the body is constantly getting food, it's constantly digesting food, it doesn't have the energy to begin with to go and work on other things. So in that situation, autophagy basically will reduce significantly. Number 10, inflammation. There's often a dramatic reduction in the inflammation within the body when doing intermittent fasting, because the body is very efficient at healing and repairing, and therefore the inflammation processes go down significantly. By doing that, the body will often reduce its pain level significantly because of that increased amount of healing that occurs. Versus calorie restriction, putting the body in a stressful situation, producing cortisol, creates lots of inflammation in the body that will dramatically increase pain and that will significantly reduce the healing capacity in the body. I experienced this personally by doing a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting for a long period of time, and I ran some blood marker tests afterwards and did some other thermal imaging scanning to see how much inflammation was in my body, and it was almost non-detectable after doing this for a long period of time because the body was running so efficiently. So I can attest to the fact that the inflammation goes down. Any of those chronic or long-term aches or pains that you have, you'll often notice a dramatic reduction in that. Number 11, improved sleep. When the body is fasting, it doesn't have to work on a lot of food digestion because you're not eating real late and snacking right before bed. It can put you into a really healthy state of sleep and work on the repairing that the body needs. And it's during sleep that most fat burning occurs. So when you have good sleep, you're going to dip into fat burning much more effectively. So it's a dramatic difference between when you sleep with intermittent fasting versus sleeping when your body is in a calorie restricted, stressed out, starving state. Sleep is often awful. And the body will, sometimes people can fall asleep okay, but they often complain that they wake up between 1 and 3 a.m. because the body gets into that stress response state between those hours, maybe as late as 4 a.m., and often they can't go back to sleep. So dramatic differences between those. Often also poor sleep on the starvation side, you're not getting enough nutrients. Minerals are very necessary to help a person sleep, so that's also one of the reasons for that. Okay, number 12, good mood. There's less stress in the body, there's less anxiety. So obviously the body can experience that and show that by how it acts. So you can just feel enjoyable elements of life, and people can look at you and you look and feel healthy, and your interactions with people will be often much happier and they'll notice it. Versus when a person is starving themselves, the body feels massive amounts of stress, it feels anxious, it doesn't know when its next meal is going to come, although it's probably going to be in like 2 hours, but often very high carbohydrate meal, sometimes very low nutrition, as I said. And when that's occurring, it will be incredibly irritable, and people often use the term hangry. And sometimes people get hangry even though they ate 2 hours before and they feel starving because their blood glucose spiked when they ate that high carbohydrate meal, and then it crashed soon thereafter and they get very irritable. Number 13, mental clarity or focus. This is a very cool one. So many people don't want to lose weight, but they do things like intermittent fasting because they really want to improve their ability to focus and to think and for their brain to function at high levels. And many people use this when basically doing major projects to try to get into a really good cognitive state of mind, and they can produce tremendous amounts of work by doing that. And ultimately, if your focus is there, you're going to be much more productive. So ultimately as well, there's an increase in something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You may want to look that one up as well. But ultimately, that is a tremendous thing to have produced in your body, which ultimately will help your body to repair nerve endings, and your brain will function at a much clearer level when this is produced in higher levels. And if you want to massively expand the amount of BDNF that's produced in your body, add intense elements of exercise. Short bursts of exercise with plenty of rest in between can really help to skyrocket that BDNF. versus the opposite completely occurs when you're starving. A person feels mentally unfocused, not clear at all. They feel that brain fog existing, and in no way do they feel like they can be productive because the BDNF drops significantly. We're getting towards the end here. Number 14, immune function. Now, in this situation, when a person has lots of extra energy because it's not wasting tons of energy on digestion, the body feels at ease, and the immune system can be incredibly effective at fighting off those things that are constantly around us. I've been blessed with a very good immune system, and in large part it's because I've continued to not put certain amounts of stress in my body by the types of foods that I consume. And when I was doing intermittent fasting especially, my immune system was incredible. People would be sick all around me, and I didn't feel like it was affecting my body in any way at that point. So definitely something that you can try to improve if you're getting sick all the time, which is often the case if a person is in starvation mode from dieting or has been in the past. I have to stress that. This could be from years ago that a person did this and they're still feeling the ill effects because their metabolism has been destroyed in some way by that. But that can be reversed over time, and there's other videos that we can show you to help with that situation. But ultimately, the immunity decreases, the body feels dis-ease. Okay, that's obviously a way that people would come up with the term disease. Okay, I'm not saying a person will absolutely become diseased by that, but when dis-ease or lack of ease in the body occurs, it becomes easier for a person to get sick and for illness to creep in. And number 15, overall increased health occurs by doing intermittent fasting. Vitality occurs by doing intermittent fasting. A person has plenty of energy to do the things that they want. They feel vital. They have joy in life again, and that is definitely one of the absolute greatest benefits of doing this type of program. Versus a person having decreased health overall, they don't feel vital at all. They don't even want to go out and do things because they don't have enough energy to even have their body function at a good level. So it basically makes a person feel awful. Now, one final thing I wanted to add here, which actually I believe is one of the most important things to help a person to lose weight long term. I would say intermittent fasting is probably the number 2 way for a person to help lose weight and balance blood sugar long term. But I believe that actually improved detoxification, okay, is one of the absolute best things, which fortunately intermittent fasting helps to do. Because when you're not digesting food again for long periods of time, the body has plenty of time and energy to put towards the natural detoxification processes like autophagy I spoke of and many other things to help to improve the overall detoxification channels. Now, if you add to that doing a detoxification program or a cleanse to help to clear out all that buildup toxins in the body, you can take your health to a completely different level versus the opposite here where detox channels slow down and elimination channels aren't effective versus the calorie restrictive situation over there. So I know there's a lot of information here. I hope it wasn't overwhelming, but I really wanted to point out the significant differences that exist between intermittent fasting and calorie restriction over there. Don't let your body get into a starvation mode by going that route. Make sure you're getting plenty of calories, make sure you're getting plenty of nutrition, and look into intermittent fasting. Like I said before, look at the link below for our intermittent fasting video so you can understand more about types of intermittent fasting and how to initiate intermittent fasting. You don't want to go from traditionally eating 3 to 6 meals a day and just jump right into intermittent fasting. You will feel probably awful by doing it and you will fail, and ultimately I don't want to see that happen for you because this can have tremendous long-term benefits for you and for many of your family members as well. So I hope you enjoy this information. It's been life-changing for myself and many of my patients. I hope it can be for you. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button below. We would so appreciate that. And definitely subscribe to our channel so you can get the other videos that we've produced and will be producing in the future, many of which will help people to understand these principles and definitely helping to balance hormones as well. And then lastly, please share this with friends and family, because we want to make a difference in helping other people, and by sharing it, that can help the reach to get out there to help give information to people to make an immediate difference in their life by doing intermittent fasting versus the traditional starvation diet. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it very much, and I hope you have a blessed day.